I'm sure many of you have heard the phrase, travel broadens the mind. They weren't kidding. Pack your bags and grab your passports. We're going on a trip. Today's story takes place back in 2012. I decided to take a short holiday by myself to do some exploring in the beautiful island of Bali, Indonesia. And while I was there, my friend, who lives and works out there, happened to be my tour guide, so I spent a lot of time with her. Within the first 2 days, she actually took me to her church, where I met a whole group of people that she was very close to. I really got to know them. Naturally, they got to know that I did magic, and those people made me feel unbelievably welcome. They were like their own family. It was beautiful. So before Lucy and I left that day, I was informed that they were going to go on a trip the next day to a small village near Sanur, and the purpose of the day trip was that they were going to provide medical assistance by certified doctors to the people who couldn't afford it. So this sounded like a really worthwhile cause, and a great opportunity for me to do something that didn't involve anything touristy. Aside from that fact, I just felt like I wanted to spend more time with the church group. I'm actually still friends with some of them to this very day. Freddie, his adorable wife ELLY, and the very talented daughter Nadira pretty much labelled themselves as my Balinese family. So the very next morning, my friend Lucy picked me up on the back of her scooter, and we drove to meet them at the coach. From there, it was about an hour's journey to actually get to this little village. And I remember the church group and we did things to make the time fly by. And naturally, I was asked to get up and do a few magic tricks. And this was all on a moving coach. Wouldn't exactly be legal in England. So we arrived and everybody got to work. All the church group, they just set up. All of the doctors, they got into place and they got all of the medical equipment sorted out. I asked a number of times if there was anything I could do to help, but they seemed completely fine. They had everything sorted. And it seemed like I would actually just get in the way if I actually tried to help. I actually felt useless because I was just there hanging out with Lucy and a few of the other church group members, and I felt more like a spectator. I really felt like I didn't have too much of a purpose there, and I started to feel bad about that. But then one of our friends, Roger, came over and sat next to me, and he said to me, "So Chris, the villagers are starting to arrive, and I was wondering if you would would you be able to do some magic tricks to keep them occupied, because a lot of them are going to be waiting." So my reaction was, "What, for everyone? I can do that, yeah." So I got up and we actually used a platform for me to stand on, and I would get different volunteers to actually help out. Everybody was watching. I would get 1 or 2 children involved, and even with the language barrier, I would aim to make it fun, and we would have a wonderful back and forth. So I have to say, this was incredible because I came to this village feeling like another tourist. But in that moment, Roger helped me to realize my purpose. All of these people, from the children to the elders, were just wonderful, and we all just had a blast. Oh, lots of laughs between us were exchanged. So after I finished performing, I decided to sit on the side by myself, and then I was suddenly joined by these 2 very adorable children who were actually part of the church group. They were sisters. The older sister could speak English, but the younger sister, who was very cute and very giggly, she couldn't really speak any English. So the big sister introduced herself as Siska, Francisca. And she introduced to me her very adorable, very beautiful young sister, Velicia. Siska was around 11 years old and Veli was around 7 years old at the time. And Veli was very touchy-feely, always wanting to hold my hand, and she was just laughing all the time and giggling. And she actually loved this little trick that I actually did with one of these. Yeah, naturally it became one of her favorite little tricks to see. Where I go from one to the other like that, and I'm between engaging with her and Siska's on this side, teaching me certain words in Bahasa, which is the language they speak out there. We would use the notepad of my iPhone to actually write down different translations that they were teaching me. And we would just spend time there, just really chatting, for quite a long time. And Veli, in a very excited way, and just held her arms up to me like that because she wanted me to pick her up. So I'm holding her and she's very giggly. She's constantly making me laugh because she's playing with my ears and my nose. And had a little bit of stubble on my facial hair, so she'd rub her cheek against mine to see what my facial hair feels like. But just in general, she was just this excitable little girl. And when I looked at her, I saw happiness. That level of happiness that a lot of adults seem to randomly lose over time. But here it was in front of me, staring back at me. And this was proof that it existed. At the end of the day, all the villagers had been seen to, and it was time for us to leave. So, at that moment, Veli instantly took me by the hand and started leading me onto the coach, because she wanted to make sure that we were sat next to each other. Siska sat on the seat just behind us, and Veli would actually get into a very comfortable position, and she would kind of lie down so she's resting against my lap, and she just very instantly fell asleep there. And in that moment I actually felt protective of this little girl. So I sat back and I fell asleep too. Around 2 weeks later, I was 2 days from leaving Bali. So Lucy took me to her church for the final time where I would see everyone again. So after the service, we're all interacting and chatting. I had 1 or 2 photos taken of everyone. Even Siska as well, who's such a cool, articulate kid. So I remember kneeling down on the floor as Veli was playing with her dad's iPad. And so I said to Siska, who was nearby, "Hey Siska, could you explain to Veli that I'm going to England on Monday and I'm not coming back?" So she's playing a game still on the iPad but still listening to her sister. And then at a certain point she would just instantly stop in the middle of her game and she would look up at her sister and then she would look at me and she just went over to me and just wrapped her arms around my neck without saying anything. Now, it was nice, but really gut-wrenching at the same time. You know the Pixar movie, Monsters Incorporated? Well, in one of the last scenes when Sully says goodbye to the baby, Boo, the baby gets up to give him a hug, and Sully hugs her back. And the animator who worked on that scene didn't make Sully cry. Instead, the animator had Sully on the brink of tears, where his eyes would just well up. On that day that Veli gave me a hug like that, I was Sully. It was just one of those times that I realized that I could see myself being a father one day. Oh, I could definitely tell more stories in general about the entire trip, but what I'm going to do for you instead is to include in the description area of this video a link to a playlist. And the playlist is entitled Back to Bali, and it's a series of videos that depicts my entire trip to Bali. So if you want to see all the different experiences and the crazy shenanigans I got up to during that trip, do check out the playlist. So I'm just going to end on this note. If you can, and if you feel you have the means, it doesn't even have to be abroad, but try and travel. Travel authentically. Travel totally. Broaden your mind. Live for the little moments. Continue to take those mental pictures as well. I know I have a truckload right now. I'm sending all of my love and best wishes to my Balinese family. I miss you guys, and you're all still here. Everyone, thank you for listening to this story. Please be sure to like my Facebook page, my YouTube page, Instagram, Twitter. Hope you're all well, having a fantastic week. Much love to you.